When someone's actions and works are congruent with their beliefs, then they're living authentically. People can trust them. They have more community. When we react out of an emotional place, we're basing our identity on how we feel. I tend to use fear as a compass for where I need to go.
Okay.
Because I know that if I'm afraid of it, that's where the greatest amount of growth is. Fear is not a reason to say no. Sometimes you're going to have a vision and you're going to want something. Nobody else can see it yet. And it's going to be up to you to teach people how to see it.
The Artist Square brings the most ballsy artists and creatives that not only question the world they live in, but dare to cross borders and make a difference through art. If you're looking for inspiration, knowledge, or simply connect with your favorite artist, we want this to be the space for you. I'm Alejandra Camacho, and want to welcome you to one more episode of The Artist Square. Estoy súper feliz porque... Why? English. Okay, I'm super happy that Andrea is here.
Okay, we gotta do the Spanish too.
Yeah, Spanish. I'm super happy because we both have like very busy schedules, and I'm very grateful that you finally are here. So thank you so much. She is an actress, she's a host, and she's a producer as well. She has an awesome skill that is carpentry, and this carpentry, I just want to understand, got you into... I mean, super important to be the host of the Fixers TV. That is a show dedicated to make a difference through art and to like communities in like around the world.
Yeah, so it's a construction-based show, and we do build projects for communities in need. And it was interesting how that started because building in general, I was just doing a lot of volunteer work with organizations, the Appalachian Project, CAP, just volunteering, and I just really liked working with my hands and lending a hand in that. And it was always more of a hobby, but I never thought that I would do it for work in any way. So
okay.
I'd never done a professional grade build before the show, and but what was my area of expertise was I'd studied comparative religions. I studied world religions in high school, and I studied philosophy, and I took a lot of courses like that in college. And then, I studied comparative religion at Harvard for 2 years, and that really brought my love of culture and human communication and experience. And of course, I've been acting professionally since I was very, very young. And so with that interest in kind of human nature and embodying different perspectives and roles, and then also what drives and motivates people in terms of their devotion, that led me to have my kind of skill set for the show, which is interacting with communities and building bridges of understanding between them and our group and what their, I guess, dreams are and motivation for what we're building the project for. And it varies extremely. Like we did one in Guatemala, which was for amputees, and it was a park to let them learn how to use their prosthetics in a safe and controlled way, and we got to learn about their experience through that. But we've also done one in Kenya where we built a barn because they want to have sustainable farming practices while also build an income for the orphanage that we were working with. And so the stories vary exponentially. And so, and another area that I kind of contribute mostly on the show is kind of linguistics. I have a big interest in that. My dad was a Latin professor, and he speaks 4 languages. I speak 2.5. I'm getting there. I'm working on it.
Wait, which ones? English, Spanish, and
English, Spanish, French, and well, now that I've traveled with the show, I try to adopt the language as quickly as possible, and it's kind of one of the challenges that we have on the show. But I work with 3 other guys on the show that are extremely talented builders in different respects. There's Courtney, who's an incredible inventor, and he can basically turn any scraps or recycled materials into something functional, make something cool of it, and he's quite artistic about it as well. And then there's Kieran, who is kind of the head of the build itself. He's a general contractor, so he heads the project, and he's built so many. I mean, that's what he does professionally, general contracting. And then we've had a few hosts for the 4th Fixer, but our main one for the season 3 that I got to be a part of was Nick. He's a painter professionally more than anything, but also a carpenter and a skilled builder. So we all kind of lend a hand in everything. And of course, my hobby then turned into, hey, you better be able to do carpentry at a professional grade, so I read a lot of books and I asked for a lot of help.
Yeah, that's what I saw because you seem like a professional. How did the project get into your hands? Like, did you got it through your agent or how did you find about it?
Yeah, I found out about it while I was actually living in Mexico. When COVID hit, I was kind of between LA and Mexico a lot. I just wanted to reconnect with my culture, and I thought it was a good time to do that while everything was kind of shut down. And, we had our personal projects, and mine was like, hey, go back to the homeland. So I was really shocked when this came through, essentially, because I did work on a couple of telenovelas down there as an actress, and I was working on some sustainable energy projects, working with communities. I really saw myself working with people and communities and wanted to do something kind of bigger than myself and bigger than the acting thing. I love acting and the creative outlet of it, but I always wanted to kind of understand human nature through embodying different characters and also hopefully be part of projects that made people either think or feel inspired. And as I was starting to do that, my agent called me because I'd kind of talked to him, letting him know I was doing this, and he said, hey, this project's come up and I think you would be perfect for it because from the way that you speak, I know you love theology and philosophy and culture, and you are already very well traveled. It's a reality show. And I said, nope, no way, I don't do reality.
Why? Is there a reason?
Yeah, well, I just, it's one of those things where I'm just very devotional about the area of work that I'm in. And reality shows were fun for me to watch, and I didn't know that I could be myself on camera and then have that be edited or controlled or anything. I don't know. It's one of those things that I just thought, oh, I'm not sure. But then he described it to me and I said, this is a dream come true. Because he said, well, it's a build show. And I know that you have carpentry experience. It has to do with traveling the world and connecting with communities in either in need or they say communities in need, but I don't like using that terminology because when I go there, really, it feels like they have so much that we don't have in more developed countries sometimes, whether it's family that is really united or kind of essence of who they are. Yeah, the need is more material, of course, or just the dream that they're unable to fulfill. So that we're kind of helping to do. So what he said is, you travel to communities and you do this build project in a week's time. And I thought, wow, that sounds super fun because of the challenge element of it, the adventure, the getting to learn about the cultures from their own words, from their own perspectives, not as a tourist, but kind of just hand in hand, building rapport through working on a greater mission. When I auditioned, it was the funniest audition experience ever. So.
Well, how was it?
Well, I had to build a box.
Okay.
Which seems very simple, right? Because they just had all these different power tools and objects to do that with, and different kinds of wood and everything. But at the same time, they were asking me questions while on camera, and they were, like meaning of life questions.
Okay.
And so I'm trying to come up with a design and with something that is functional as a box while they're asking me these deep philosophical questions. And it's just bizarre because I've been to so many auditions in my life. Like for commercials, you do a lot of improv in commercials, like and theater and singing and like in musical theater. And I just never done anything like this where I'm having to come up with deeper answers while also
like paying attention. Yeah.
And I love to focus on one thing at a time. My brain, I'm very ADD, so I taught myself to focus and hyper-focus on what's right in front of me. So then when you give me like 3 tasks, then my ADD goes, whoa. And I'm just I just feel like I'm all over the place. That was really going to be my role on the show, was one that was more connective rather than being the best builder. I can hold my own. Definitely not afraid of power tools, so that's good.
That's awesome. Yeah, because there is a lot going on. I was looking at the show and just like, wow, you have to cut this piece of wood and at the same time talking. Like I would have just like cut my face.
You don't want to be super distracted, right? And you want to be really focused when you're using especially higher grade power tools. But have you ever done construction?
No, like the nearest construction thing I did, it was like 3 weeks ago. I was trying to hang a backdrop from the ceiling.
Oh.
And I bought, how do you call it, the taladro? like
The drill?
the drill.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I've done so far, and I'm like, wow, this is a whole thing.
I like
have
the sound
fun.
effect, by the way. That one? Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that one.
It is, yeah, at the beginning you're like, oh no, I'm making a hole in the ceiling. And then you're like, okay, it's
Oh,
fine.
so this was the pre-drill. So was it a pre-drill or were you screwing something in?
It was a pre-drill. I think because I have to make a hole
Right.
and then put the...
Right, so the pre-drill to make the hole. Yeah, that's nerve-wracking for sure.
Yeah. How does the show find about all these communities?
So we partner with different nonprofits in
Okay.
different parts of the world. We will essentially reach out to certain ones that we think are doing something really interesting in locations that we would love to tell the story of. It works both ways. Essentially, our showrunner does a big job in casting a lot of them, and then the production company and the network work together to see if that's something that fits into the season of the show, because we really want to give a lot of diversity and variety in terms of the stories that we're telling and the places that we're going, just to keep good balance. It's all people based. It's who do you know that is doing something that is interesting, and then they kind of make you a part of their project, or you jump on board. Or I think any industry really, it's really rooted in people and relationships.
Yeah.
And it's important to maintain and know how to create those, with anyone from any background. Yeah.
You look in the show so curious, and I love it. It's just you keep that curiosity alive. Is it hard sometimes, like, to connect with people that probably you haven't met before?
I don't really overthink it. Well, thanks for saying that. Really?
Like, that's my personality. That's just the way I am.
I think curiosity is something that we all have inherently within us. I work a lot with kids, even to this day, and just kids have a natural curiosity about the world, because there's so many questions. They're just sponges. They absorb all of this information from what's around them. And that's evolution, right? We touch the hot stove and we never touch it again, because that's keeping us alive, essentially. But beyond that, there's a curiosity, I think, an inborn search for a devotional search for something that gives purpose to our lives and that gives meaning to things around us. Curiosity about the world can be maintained throughout life, and I truly believe in actively doing that, because as soon as you start to think that you have all the answers, or you start to define yourself, you're limiting yourself from a wider scope that is actually reality in the world. And traveling helps keep one humble, because you see so many things that you realize you're never going to know everything there is to know about that. And so therefore there's always so much to learn, and the more you learn, the less you feel that you know, because there's so much out there. What moves me, and when you specialize, that's where our gifts come alive. Disclaimer, you never really feel like you're a master of anything. There's always an imposter syndrome that takes on until someone comes up to you, say a kid or something that is learning it for the first time, and you realize the wealth of information that comes from experience and from battling with that subject matter for as long as one has.
I like that you said when you define yourself, you don't leave space to get to know more.
You're creating already parameters and limits around you. You're also dividing yourself away from anything that isn't that leaves room for fear when the unexpected happens, and you're suddenly pushed to go outside of your comfort zones or outside of those very parameters that you built around yourself, right? When it comes to human relationships, being able to venture into a lot of different areas and be curious about them and just collect bits and pieces of information and be genuinely interested. That's how memory works. Like when you're genuinely interested in something, it tends to resonate. And then you end up meeting someone that you'd think, oh, we don't really speak the same language, but they're really into that very area. But your interests will be points of conversation that then lead to a deeper connection. And it's not about what's being said, but rather the connection that is there. Because we're called to each other. I mean, there's a reason why everyone has different gifts. When we all build something together and we focus on those gifts, we can create cool things.
What has traveling taught you the most?
How to sleep anywhere. No, actually, my castmates get kind of jealous because I can sleep on the bus when we're in this rocky road in the middle of Tanzania, and they'll be bouncing, and I'm just knocked out in the back from that time, and they're like, "How do you do that?" I'm like, "I don't know. I practice." I know. Being able to meet different communities that have such radically different lifestyles day to day. and interests and dreams, but just the very essence of that connects everybody. There is a level of just light that comes through in their eyes and in their presence that, oh, someone's truly seeing me, and their true personality comes out. And people at the core, no matter how old they are, I think are still kids. We're all kids on the inside. And as soon as I realized that, I relaxed, because I started feeling the age the time, I should say, not age, but time coming by a little quicker. And I thought, oh my gosh, I need to hurry up. I need to be a grown-up. Like, I'm supposed to be a grown-up right now. What does that mean? And no, I think that, we're all kids on the inside. Kind of tap into the essence of who people are. It's the same no matter whether you're in Tanzania or in South America, in Suriname, in the jungles of the Amazon with like a tribe. I mean, everybody at the core has a longing and desire to be connected to others. Whatever the mission is, there's always going to be an element of collaboration and self-knowing. And the beauty of being in a lot of these places is that a lot of them are not disappeared into technology. They're not on their phones and disconnected from each other. For the most part, they're still present here with the land, with nature, with one another. I think that makes a big difference. And so I think traveling and seeing that actually at the core, all human beings really want the same thing was the biggest moving factor for me and for my heart.
What has been the best experience so far? Because I know each experience is unique, but what has stayed with you?
Oh my goodness. I think any time that I have gotten to work with kids has been a very moving element for me, because kids just see the wonderment in everything and the great things in life, right? Mm-hmm. The most recent, it was probably Bangladesh. Okay. Bangladesh was a very interesting challenge because the weather was incredibly challenging for a build project. We were building a school bus where the bus is the school. So it's a mobile school, and it goes to community after community in that one area. It was like 90% humidity, and the temperature was in the late 90s to early hundreds. Oh, wow. So with that humidity plus the extreme heat, plus operating power tools and being on a bus that in close quarters, it was a lot of electrolytes and a lot of water every single day. I mean, I was probably drinking 5 gallons of water, which meant like I just
5 gallons a day.
Yeah, it was. I mean, because it's brutal. Yeah. So I really enjoyed the physical challenge of that. Actually, I just like adventure. I like seeing what my body's capable of. So that was a cool adventurous element to Bangladesh. It was also a little bit challenging in terms of the things that we were able to show and what we weren't able to show on the show. Like, we couldn't have any drones because they didn't want to show the state of poverty in certain areas, and this was just coming from the government. But working with these kids was incredible because we were working in an area that was extremely destitute from resources of any kind. I mean, these kids were eating probably dried rice and things that we would think, wow, that you're surviving off of that exclusively every day, and that was hard to watch. But these kids they're happy and they're almost taking care of each other. And there was just this group of families that were neighbors with each other, but the kids were growing up like they're siblings, and they're playing together in the dirt. They're making sandcastles out of mud and gravel that's just on the ground, and then they're making toys out of, one made a kite out of a plastic bag and a string and was just flying it around area, which was that was what they had to play with, right? Yeah. It was just so impactful to watch that because nothing was stopping them from playing. Nothing was stopping them from being kids. And I think it's a great lesson for us to remember that if we're waiting to have a specific thing to be able to play or to be able to do this one thing, it's just silly. Like, if you want to do something, you go and do it. And these kids, they made a jump rope out of vines that they just tied together, and it worked great. We played double scotch, and we're doing like tandem jump roping. And
what's tandem scotch?
Like when two people jump the rope.
Oh, okay, got it.
There were others too. There was just one was spinning like a ball on a stick, and they just had all these creative ways. Yeah. And they had these smiles that just lit up the room and every morning I'd go and say hi to them. We had a little stretch class and we would play games and my co-hosts would tease me because we hadn't started the build yet, but they'd tease me and they'd be like, "Oh, are you gonna help us build today?" Or was it like you're just jealous that they love me? No, I'm just kidding. No, but so the heart and the spirit in these kids, the purity of that was so profound and so empowering, to then say, okay, I'm going to take this with me back to the States, and like, even if I lose everything, if I hold on to that childlike spirit, I can make something out of nothing.
Is that easier for you to be more grateful about certain stuff, or?
Well, it's interesting because sometimes I come back to LA and I get a little bit of culture shock being here, just because, I guess there is a perspective of we need to all be helping each other out. But there's some things, like I kind of mentioned earlier, that there's a richness in spirit and in community that a lot of these places have around the world that I find can be harder to find in LA sometimes. And there's a poverty here in spirit in terms of, people here feel like incredibly isolated. I mean, I talk to a lot of people and there's a spirit of loneliness, a spirit of people live to work as opposed to working to live. And that varies, everybody's different. But as an overall culture, the way people are disconnected here because they have so many things, it can be a distraction. Perhaps what's more meaningful to the human spirit and to the human purpose of togetherness is much more alive. So when I'm going through something emotionally, I remember, hey, I am aware that I'm in an emotional place and reacting emotionally. So I do try to pause. And the Stoics always said that. I think Roman Greek times, there's like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus and Seneca and these kind of wise leaders from those times that developed a way of living in a virtuous manner that would be most beneficial to your own purpose in the world. And one of the lessons in Stoicism is to never react right away, but pause. And it's in that pause that you can actually infuse what you intend to do with the situation, as opposed to acting out of an emotional impulse or a defensive impulse, or bringing in stuff from the past or things that might not serve you for the outcome that you want. And then you regret it. For me, what it's really done, traveling, is created a sense of how I perceive things in this moment are very limited. In order to see all vantage points, I need to pause and see how much greater kind of bird's eye view on the situation, and see how much greater things around me are, and suddenly the problem seems mighty small.
It's a good way to put it, especially for me. I shouldn't say this, but I'm very like, something happens and I react immediately. But now
I mean, that's natural. That's
right,
human nature.
But then I regret it because I'm just like, Alejandra, like, you can do so many things if you just stop and be like, what are you gonna gain if you react this way? That's a good lesson, a great lesson, I would say.
Thank you for sharing that. But I do think it's natural to react sometimes when we're in a place, and because when we react out of an emotional place, we're basing our identity on how we feel in that given moment. Subconsciously, right? In the brain, something is telling us, like, I am what I do, right? And so when we're able to pause and not be reactive, there is a mastery of self that takes place. And if you look at, some great leaders and philosophers like, Gandhi or Martin Luther King, they all preached peace, right? A peaceful approach to things. It's not the natural way when we're angered about some injustice that's taking place. But the pause helps us create intentionally the person that we want to be with our actions. And then we can trust that we're going to act that in that manner in a consistent way. And that makes others trust that. And then suddenly you're really living out what you believe, as opposed to, and that's so important, when someone's actions and works are congruent with their beliefs, then they're living authentically. People can trust them. They have more community. They can be humbled by learning something new, or when they mess up, they can then make the turn and the switch and adjust accordingly because they have that self-mastery. As opposed to if you're basing your identity on emotions and you're giving them power over you, and then I mean, emotions are all over the place, you know.
Yeah.
They're fueled by so many factors, from hormones to things that happen around us that we can't control. And then when we do that, we give our power to things that we can't control. And why would you do that?
What's the most fun moment you've ever had?
Especially when it comes to misunderstandings and,
Okay.
you know, when you're learning the local language and then you think that you communicated one thing and then they're laughing at you because you communicated something else.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it's, oh, okay. You know, and so I think it's the moments of learning to, like, everybody's laughing at themselves. And the differences that exist, but you're in a way, it's laughter that's united. You know, when you laugh at somebody else, it's unifying, and so it doesn't matter if, you know, you're laughing at the circumstance. It's really hard to hold on to specific stories and instances sometimes when there's just been so many trips consecutively back to back.
Yeah.
Because the jet lag and the physical exhaustion from the build and everything takes over, and then. Like, I do write a lot of these things down. I would say, too, when we were in Suriname, Suriname's the smallest country in South America. We were in the jungles of Suriname working with a tribe out there where it was just fascinating. And I remember I was working alongside a medicine man of the community. He was living right there in the jungle, and he could take any plant and make kind of a potion out of it, and which was healing to different things. And he was a very faithful person as well, and he had the greatest sense of humor. And it was so interesting because he'd make so much fun of me for not knowing he was, you know, like 50 years older than me. I mean, he was 80 and super strong and working on this build project with us. And he's a shaman, right?
Okay.
So very wise, profound human. And he was referencing all of these music, like rock and roll musical legends, and I don't know that much about rock and roll. And some of these names I just didn't know. And so he was like, "Who's the American here?" and we were just laughing. So he was teasing me a lot. But then we'd have these moments of just talking about the meaning of life and God and what that looks like for him, and how he led a very difficult life, and then he went into the army to protect his community, and just very worldly, traveled individual. And so we'd have these moments of just cry laughing, and then we'd have these moments of groundedness, and he shared very deep personal stories from his life. And just, it was really hard because leaving that place after 1 week, I just felt like I made like a soul tie with this person, this shaman who had become almost like this father figure for me, because he could be present with me, and he's just like, I really see you, I really see your spirit. And that just felt so incredible based on what he was sharing with me. Moments like that where they're grounded in an essence of something a little bit more profound, and then moments of just hilarity and laughing and not taking ourselves or life too seriously.
Yeah.
There's no time to take life seriously, to be honest. We are in a time crunch, and that's that's why we have such amazing field producer, and which this last season was Cassie, and she did an incredible job in keeping us on time. I'm sure it was a pain in the butt for her, but she was so great and so professional and kind about it. But yeah, no, I mean, it is a time crunch because we're doing a whole build project in 1 week.
Yeah.
And that's unheard of in a lot of places as it is. And a lot of people don't believe we actually get it done in that 1 week.
Yeah.
But it is. It's 1 week.
1 week.
And every day, I mean, once the show comes out, you know, they have to edit the 12 hours we've been building for one day, get edited to, it's a 1 hour show, right?
Yeah.
So we think it's really 5 days of building, then the 6th day we kind of turn it over to the community, and it's reveal day. Yeah, I mean, it's a race to the finish line most of the time.
Has it ever happened that you guys do not finish? Because it's mentioned in the show. A lot is just like, way behind, you know? Like, and I'm like, oh my God, are they even allowed to say this? That they're struggling? Do they like?
It's great.
You have to finish, but has it ever happened that you do not finish?
We've definitely gotten close to really not finishing.
Okay.
We've definitely been very scared about that because we all care about doing a good job, and we can't stay longer in a lot of these places. It's just not possible, whether it's because of the visa situation of being there for a specific amount of time, also like a huge group of people from the crew and production staying there to us as the hosts. It's logistically very challenging, so we have to finish in the time allotted. So it has happened that we haven't been able to do what our hearts desired to do with things, but we always get what we went to do done in its simplest form. Like if we are there to build, a school classroom for, in Zambia, we built a Zambia. Sometimes I say Zambia and they laugh at me, but it's because that's where my Mexican comes out, like my accent from speaking Spanish. So the director's like, yep, we are interviewing all the zombies in Zambia.
No, wait, it is Zambia. Zambia.
Zam.
Okay.
Zambia. English is funny.
It is.
Zambia. Yeah.
See?
Zambia. But I don't know why in English I'm like,
Zambia.
I want to say Zambia because... But no, that sounds like zombie. And
Yeah.
that is not right.
So
It is Zambia. In Zambia, we built a few classrooms. We built like a library, and we built roofs on these half-finished classrooms because they had lost funding. And then we built entirely new classrooms. And that was a lot for doing in 6 days. The cool thing is that, and one of my contributions, I think, to the show as well, is that I love developing systems to work together collaboratively as a team. And so having an idea of, okay, how many workers do we have? And Kieran, being the general contractor, he assigns kind of teams at the beginning and who works with who, and keeps an overall eye on the build as a whole. You always have to have that surveyor and that person that is keeping everything going and flowing and together, and he does that well. So being able to develop systems that work more efficiently, like say if we have to get all those bricks over to where they're forming the roof half a mile away, if we don't have an actual machine that can transport them from one place to another, whether it's a truck or something, but sometimes a lot of the terrain and the situation doesn't lend itself to any excavating machines that we can get are always a luxury. We usually can't, and we usually have to do things by hand. So, getting a lot of the kids involved in the community, and we get a lot of wonderful local volunteers that usually want to lend a hand as well, because they see what the mission statement is and they want to be part of it. You just line them up, everybody, and you pass a brick, one brick at a time, and it actually goes by really quickly when lots of hands are on deck.
Yeah, because you guys get a lot of volunteers.
Yeah, it varies. There's been places where we're not able to have that many volunteers. There's been a couple where we haven't had that many volunteers. Whether it's because of logistics, like there's just some places that are really hard to get to, and they're really off the grid, and they have a small community to begin with, and they all have daily chores and things that they have to do. So then it really comes down to us. And then this past season, it hasn't come out yet, so I can't say too much, but there's definitely a challenge when it comes to numbers within the team, and you'll see what I mean. I'm teasing it now, but yeah, we had a lot of little mishaps take place, and everything's great and good now, but it definitely provided extra challenge and thinking on the spot. And what's great about challenge is that it really teaches you what you're capable of. It teaches you that you can work under pressure and come up with solutions on the spot, which creates a self-trust later on for new situations. And so I love just throwing myself into new situations of any kind, because I know the transformative elements of it on my person and on my spirit, and that's what I most care about. I love new situations because it proves to me that I can figure something out without pre-planning it, and therefore it allows me to not have to have as tightly controlled agenda or life, and just kind of give it over to something greater that maybe is guiding the way.
Yeah, that's beautiful. How much is it improvised and how much is scripted? Is it scripted or everything is improvised?
It's unscripted. Mostly all improvised. I mean, there's some, obviously, when I'm interviewing a local, the interviews are a little bit pre-planned because there is a lot of research that goes into a lot of going into the place, and we want to be informed of cultural norms and practices so that we come in with an utmost element of respect and follow what that tribe or that community subscribes to when it comes to, you know, what's considered rude in some countries would be so different than here, right? I mean, for example, in Honduras, it is, I mean, everywhere it's pretty rude to point at someone, right? But even pointing at things, like that chair over there or something in Honduras, that there can be a little bit of a superstition behind it. Like, it goes beyond being rude. It's almost like there's a kind of a witchcraft to it. In a way.
Wow.
So instead of pointing with their finger, they point with their lips. And so it's a really interesting thing. And actually, when you're around it long enough, it's so fascinating how human beings adapt. Yeah, because I started doing it by like day 3. I was like, whoa, did I just do that?
You're like,
it was just,
that.
Yeah. Let's go over there. And that's how they do it. And then it's
beautiful.
Isn't it
What?
fun? It's
Yeah.
funny. And then places like Thailand, like when you cross your feet, you never want to expose the bottom of your foot to another person. That's considered highly disrespectful. So of course, like anywhere that you're going, you want to just research these little nuances because you're going into someone else's home and territory, and you're a guest there. And if you're going to be a guest, I mean, it's up to you. Communication is the responsibility of the communicator. And so if you are going to go somewhere, it's your responsibility to make sure that you are abiding by those practices so that they're not imposed upon.
Okay, since it is not scripted, I'm just curious. Do you ever say something that, what if like you pointed something and you were not supposed to? Is it like, has it happened that you've said something that you're not allowed? I mean, I know they can edit, but...
It's happened a couple of times that, you know, someone says something and they didn't really think about it beforehand. But for the most part, there's a lot of grace from the locals to that because they know that, you know, we're coming from the U.S. and sometimes don't have the full context. No matter how much research you have, there's always things that you're going to learn much more when you're on the ground and you're there present in the communities than you ever could from the internet or books. That's just how it works, right? And then things evolve too. So you want to find out what the most local expectations are. And so there's a lot of laughing at us, that's for sure.
I know we've talked a lot about inspiration. What inspires you overall to go there? And because I know you guys travel a lot and sometimes it can be very like exhausting. So what makes you be like, let's go and do it?
I think there's a few different answers. I would say 2 things. The first, that I was always taught by my amazing parents that you have to be committed and driven to do what you're doing. And if you take on any task, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what the job is. You know, if you're working a minimum wage job, serving tables, or if you're landed your dream role on a TV show and you're getting to do that, like you put 100% of yourself into that until the job is done, right? And so for me, getting to the finish line, there's just no question about it. Like, it's going to happen. And we're going to make it happen, and we're going to roll with the punches, and that's how it goes. A different aspect of it too is that same with my faith. Like, I deeply believe that having a relationship with God and something greater is very devotional. It's not emotional. A lot of people think, oh, I just feel very inspired right now, and like that's what being spiritual is. And when you're not inspired, you're not in a good place. And I just don't think that's true. Like, there's a consistency and a steadiness to following a belief. Whether that's a belief that you are going to meet the day with, you know, the best of intentions and the greatest expectations, and when things go awry, you're going to find a way through. And there are days that, like you said, I'm exhausted and jet-lagged and nervous about not having certain access to resources and materials that were promised would be there, but then at the end of the day weren't, and now we have to improvise. And there's a lot that goes on emotionally and intellectually when you're in that state, but the devotional element then comes in, because it's not about how I feel, It's about what's at stake and what's greater and why we're here.
Yeah.
And keeping that at the forefront of your mind always. And so in anything that you do, you always want to be devotional. And that goes to relationships too. You know, I truly believe that if you are choosing to share your life with somebody, there's going to be issues and there's going to be things that you are working through with the other person alongside the very beautiful moments and the things that made you go into that connection in the first place. But it's a devotional energy. It's a devotional, not even energy, like mindset that you go, okay, I'm devoted to this person. That my loyalty is there to this project, to this human, to whatever it is. And it's that sense of loyalty that I think ties back into what we were talking about being able to trust ourselves to show up into any situation that's going to give you a real sense of who you really are. It's our actions that define us. Yeah. It's not what we think we want. It's how we behave every single day. And even in faith traditions, any faith tradition, but in mine, I mean, I'm Christian, so there's a scripture that says, you know, faith without works is dead, and it's true. If someone is not exemplifying the lifestyle of someone that has faith, or what the faith is calling for, there's kind of a hypocrisy there and a lukewarm approach to that devotion.
Among all of this, what would you say is the most important lesson that you've learned?
Yeah, I mean, I think we touched on it a little bit, but it's that trusting in your own capacity to figure anything out. Because a lot of the challenges that we face on the road are extremely unpredictable. Because we might think we have everything logistically planned out and everything has been worked in a way. At the end of the day, you know, you get a monsoon, and we've been stuck in the middle of a couple of monsoons now, tropical weather storms that come out of nowhere that we didn't expect, and then you can't operate most power tools in that because it's too much water, and then, you know, you're working with electricity and that's dangerous, or they just won't work, or the wood gets wet and then you can't work with wet wood. So there's just a lot of elements that you go, okay, now we have less time than we thought, and to be able to roll with the punches, not take yourself too seriously, but take the work seriously is a very big deal. When you do figure something out, sometimes it's even better than what was planned. And that's where, you know, the age-old question of, like, is there a bigger plan for how things can work? And when you're walking in that faith, well, whatever it is, but faith in the fact that the task will get done, faith in yourself to get it done, faith in God that, you know, there's a path leading the way. It becomes this beautiful collaboration with creation, with nature, with the people around you. And that gives everything so much meaning. And then if, God forbid, something happened and you didn't get the task done, the journey to get to it has become such a profound, meaningful experience that you can then leave what work might be remaining in the very capable hands of the community and say, hey, this is all that's left to do, and thank you for the journeying with us, and now it's up to you to really put the cherry on top, which God forbid we ever have to do that, but you know, it comes down to that. It's not about us making something that helps others, it's about creating something with others that empowers them to know that they are capable of doing anything.
And what would you say that is the biggest fear that you've had?
I mean, I think new fears rise up now and then, depending on what it is. I tend to use fear as a compass for where I need to go.
Okay.
Because I know that if I'm afraid of it, that's where the greatest amount of growth is. For example, I got asked to be a teacher when I was 23. I was approached about being theater director at an all-girls high school, and they wanted to build a theater program for the school that was going to expand the arts in some way, and that was wild to me because I just felt very young. I felt inexperienced. I've been doing professional theater since I was 6, and I directed theater, and I was out in the field doing it. And so it should have felt perfectly natural but it was new. Like I've never developed a theater program before. I never taught a whole room full of young women. And that was terrifying because I'm like, who would listen to me? Why?
Yeah.
And then I just kept getting asked from different people that thought I would be good for this one job, and it was just wild. Like it kept coming back to me. I said no a few times because of that very fear of like, no, who am I to do that? And then I thought, you know what? What's the point of if it keeps coming to me? There must be a reason. So I sat down as a thought experiment, and I laid down a whole lesson plan for the year of what it would be. And I thought I was going to sit for 20 minutes and then come back to it the next day and then keep building on it. I sat for 3 hours and did the whole thing in one sitting. And I realized, oh, I guess I do know a couple of things. But I had to do it in order to figure that out. You know?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you are always going to feel like we don't know enough, or we don't.
Yeah.
We're not enough. Or there's some element of that imposter syndrome that, unless you're just out there doing it, it takes over. It's like we just analyze and our thoughts start lying to us. And it's not the case when you just show up to the task, even if you're just super afraid of it. So anyway, I showed up to the interview and I was meeting with the board and I presented the lesson plan and they really liked it. And so they asked me to take on the job. And it was so enriching because the productions were amazing and there were great artists in terms of scenic design and in terms of lighting design that collaborated with kind of what my vision was for it. And we were able to do really cool things, and the school had never done it before either. So everyone was doing something for the first time, and that was cool. And so to see that come out of that place of where I initially said no, but then something in me went, fear is not a reason to say no. Ever since then, that was a little while ago, and it was a lesson in that fear is really a compass of where you need to go in order to have the most amount of growth. Yeah. And trust in your capacity. I'm going to keep using that term. Yeah. I really want to lay that in because I think that's what education should be doing, is teaching students to trust in their own capacity to figure out and teach them how to think. Not teach them information, but teach them how to think in different ways, creatively abstracting reality and landing it into like innovative ideas, or whether it is informational and historical and or mathematical, and yet coming to their own conclusion of it. So that's a big point of reference.
It's amazing because it happens to me too, I want to think, but people who are around us and see the things that we don't see in ourselves, it's amazing that you're afraid, to do them because you have that fear. But then what you said, that people kept telling you, you're good at this, you're like, no. And
well, isn't that a blessing too? Because it's that's why it's so important. Like, who do you surround yourself with?
Exactly.
Makes a huge difference. And sometimes it's going to go the other way around. Sometimes other people are going to see in you something that you haven't yet found or trusted within yourself. But as soon as but you get it, and you have that push, and then you're able to discover it. But sometimes it's going to be the opposite. Sometimes you're going to have a vision and you're going to want something and nobody else can see it yet, and it's going to be up to you to teach people how to see it, how to view you and how to see you, and command respect in that way.
You work with the 3 same people and more, right? Like more crew. How is that?
Sorry, I love that language. And more.
Yeah, because not only, we see that is just them on camera, but no, they're like cameraman and
it takes an army.
Yeah,
absolutely.
How is that?
Something like that. Oh, it's great. It's also a challenge in communication of what needs doing, because we don't have a scripted show. So a scripted show has so much that's just planned and controlled on a set. From where the camera needs to be, and point A, point B, camera A, camera C, everybody has a plan. But in this case, you just don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if, that pillar falls and then suddenly you have to capture that. Like for the cameraman, you might be doing a really interesting scene with a local, but then that happens and the camera needs to go run and capture what just happened wrong, right?
Yeah.
And so it's constantly just being touch and go, and having that empathy and understanding that everybody's kind of on the same page in terms of having to figure things out.
Yeah.
But it takes an army to do something like this, and I'm very fortunate to work with a beautiful crew and team. We have our director, our story producer, we have our line producer that's back at the headquarters here, dealing with everything logistically, like coordinating things that need to get done from here. We have our showrunner, a few different cameras, and our main DP is James Suter, who's fantastic. He's just super talented camera operator and drone operator. The drone shots in the show are just gorgeous, and he does amazing work with that. Yeah, I'm trying to not miss anybody, but yeah, our field producer, and then there's crew, there's PAs, like we have a local fixer anywhere that we go. So that'll be a different person that's a local that lives there, that works with the community, that knows a lot of people and resources, and they'll kind of plug us in to what we need to know. Yeah, and then there's, my fellow co-hosts that just all have their unique talents and essence, and it's always really cool to get to learn from the different talents that people have and what their strong suits are, and if they have that generous spirit to teach it to you, you can only be so grateful.
True.
Sorry, you can only be so grateful. What does that mean? Only be so lucky, which I'm very grateful for.
What's the most inspirational story? I keep asking these questions that are so hard because I bet you have so many, but what's the most inspirational story that you've encountered so far in the Fixers? I will tell you mine. I think the first episode, Kenya,
Yeah.
her name is Daisy.
Yeah, Daisy.
Man, I think about it and I want to cry.
Yeah.
What she does is amazing. She was an orphan, right? And she created a school for orphans. And just the fact that she's so, what's the word? She has so much faith in what she does. It's just mind-blowing.
Like her, there's been just inspirational figures all over the place. I love that you brought her up because she was one of the people that first came to mind when you asked me that.
Okay.
I would say that she has this amazing resiliency about her. But more than that, she has done something for others. It is something she desperately needed growing up. It's what she would have wanted to have. And so when she figured out how to make it happen so that she could help others that are in similar situations to her. I mean, she was an orphan. She slept in a potato sack on the ground in the dirt. They would eat water sometimes. They would boil it and drink it to feel full because there wasn't enough to eat. And then she just wanted to get an education, and she figured out a path of her own, and then realized education is the way out. When you have an education, no one can take that away from you. And so she created a space for kids all over that were in a situation like hers to have resources and the ability to have this faith and mindset for themselves. And I think a selfless endeavor like that, there's nothing like it. There's nothing more inspirational than someone who has devoted themselves to create real change in others and based on a really hard testimony of their lives. And it's turning anything bad that happened to them into something beautiful, because those things that were bad that happened, she was able to have this vision, this clarity of what she needed to do. And this beautiful result came of all of these testimonies of kids graduating from the school and going on to higher education, and knowing that they're worthy and worth something, even though they might have been abandoned, or even though they're orphans, and society in a lot of these places can cast these kinds of people out because there's so many people and populations, and it tends to weigh on someone. But what she did was she created a space for people to really be able to form their identity outside of what anyone else could say about them. And there have been a couple of examples like that as well, where someone that had a pretty harsh reality at some point in their lives turned it into something beautiful.
Oh, beautiful. What's a fun fact about carpentry that you want to share?
Oh, I mean, I think most builders already know this. So this is for someone completely outside of building. But if you are putting together flooring or the siding of a cottage or something that is wood, if you're in a rainy area, or an area that gets any rain, really, you can expect that those boards that you're putting on are going to expand. And so you always want to leave a little bit of space between the boards in order, because those gaps are going to join. And if you don't leave that space, then the wood will warp. And then you'll have a jaggedy floor or a wall or something, and you don't want that. So for me, I have OCD about everything being very precise, and so when I see gaps, I go, "What? Why?" and then you remember, like, oh no, like it's a rainy area or it's a tropical area, or so here we definitely need even more of a gap than normally you would need to make space for that.
What advice would you give to any fellow person, artist, that want to pursue like something in the arts or not? What is maybe something more general for everybody?
I think it's important for everyone to ask themselves why they do what they do, what their mission in the world is, if you will, like what they feel their purpose is. And that can change, that can evolve over time as you gather more information about what you really want out of life, right? I know for me, at a young age, I knew that I wanted to help people feel seen, like truly seen for who they are, and to draw out their gifts of whatever drives them and their unique gifting is. And I'm not sure why I feel particularly called to that specifically, but you know, as an actor, I feel I'm really like I'm like a human scientist, like in a way, because I like to find out what drives people, what makes them tick, what makes them do what they do, and also break through the walls that are built up through experiences that maybe are traumatic or hard, and be able to get back to the essence of who we are. And when you can see somebody's essence, beauty comes out, because that's their creative flow, that's the creative space, that's where they're the most true to what they're called here to do. And so when people feel seen, then they can actually rise up to that occasion. You know, when there's an expectation of someone, usually people will rise to meet that. And what I mean is, psychologically, this has been proven, is that if someone thinks someone else doesn't like them, when they're around that person, they'll start to subconsciously do little things that are a little bit unlikable, or say things the wrong way or something, that kind of almost manifests that into existence. Whereas if you know somebody really sees you, then you can go into it as yourself, and knowing that even if you say something imperfectly, that person's going to look into what you mean, not exactly what you said, and not judge you. So if you're around people that have a similar value system and belief in the world that you are, they're going to be able to see the things in you that they have within themselves. Whereas if you're around people that haven't yet gotten to that space, they won't be able to recognize it in you. And so those are the people that you just have to kind of brush off the opinions of, and choose whose opinions you're going to care about, because we're going to care about other people's opinions no matter what. So I think, so back to advice, why do you do what you do? What's your purpose? I think there are answers to that, are going to lead one down a path of destruction or a very life-giving path. And it just depends how you answer that question. Because if you're doing what you do for material gain, like for money or attention, or prove something to someone else, all of that is external. It doesn't have to do with what's inside trying to come out. And we all have something within us, a gifting, a knowing, a drive, a seeking, that if it goes too long without being addressed, it can lead to darker places. It can lead to a lot of sadness. It can lead to cynicism about the world, or ideas being made about everything else. And I just think whatever you answer, anything I would say to creatives is that really look within and see what's trying to come out, and why you're called to that specifically. Trust what makes you unique, because that's what creates a vision that everyone else can jump on board for.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here.
No, it's my pleasure. What a cool studio. I love this space.
I love it.
I think the fact that we're just on like salt, what is it called? Himalayan salt?
Himalayan, yeah.
We're literally stepping on it. It's so grounding.
It's like we're somewhere else. What are your socials? Where can people see your show?
I am on Instagram as andy.global, andi.global, like GLOBAL. Yeah, that's basically my socials.
And The Fixers, we can see it.
Yes, The Fixers on byutv.org/The Fixers. That's the best and easiest way to do it. It's also on Discovery International. If you're outside the country, you can access it there. I think Discovery is subscription, although sometimes it's on cable as well.
Really?
Depends where you are.
Yeah, no, it's so much worth it. You learn so many things. It gets you out of the city. It opens your mind what's going on around us that we don't see, and we grow along with you guys because it's
Yeah.
very touching and very inspirational as well.
Well, and hopefully that's the case, because when we're on the road, we want to be telling these stories that are going to resonate with anybody wherever they are, because they have to do with the human spirit. And they have to do with dreaming for something greater, and we can all relate to that, I think. Wherever we go, I mean, we're documenting it as it is there. You can travel with us. That is my favorite part, is everything's meant to be shared.
Yeah, everything's meant to be shared.
Yes.
I want to share also some quotes now that you said one. I love some quotes that I got from the show. Do not take your heritage for granted. This is from the Navajo.
Yes.
You live by faith, hoping it will work. I love, we do it because it's not easy. If things were easy. And creating change as well as be changed by it. I love those.
I think that last one is really at the essence of the show, like creating change. You can go out there, venture to make a difference, but you have to acknowledge that along that journey, you are going to be changed by that experience in some way. And if, because if you're open, it's a two-way street, and then it becomes co-creation with the creator of the universe, co-creation with other people. But mostly, it's like you are the thought leader of your life. You can choose how you view any situation. And so if you're constantly in a place of, we started the interview with curiosity and wonderment. And I think those are two incredibly important things to keep with you from your childhood that you take into adulthood. And and they will always bring you to a greater perspective than being shut off from them.
For sure. Yay! Well, thank you so much.
Oh, Ale, thank you. You're so peaceful. You're so easy to talk to. This was great.